Loïc Fery, I am delighted to have you on my show, The Joy of Paddle. You and I crossed paths at the Hexagon Cup in Madrid, 2024, an exciting event, and I wanted to have you on because you've gotten really invested in paddle. Of course, you've got another life. You've done many things, and I wanted just to have a little chat first of all about who is Loïc Fery.
Well, thank you, Minter. Thank you for having me. Well, I live in London. I've been a long time in London, more than 20 years. Before that, I lived in Asia for 5 years, and grew up in France, studied in France, and started to work in banking. And after some time, I decided to be an entrepreneur in finance. So since 2007, I basically run a fund called Chenavari, and so basically I've been doing yeah investing in basically credit markets and specialty finance market in Europe mainly. We manage around 5 billion, 5.5 billion to be precise, and we have offices across Europe and the Middle East. And in sports, as you highlighted, I've been the owner and president of a French football club since 2009, which I took over in 2009, and so it's my 16th season as president and owner of FC Lorient, and have invested in this beautiful sport of paddle now just over a year ago, in the context of the Hexagon Cup. But I guess we will talk about it in more detail.
We surely shall. So, I'm a brand guy, Loïc. Chenavari, tell me about how did you come up with that name for your fund?
Okay, so I mean, it's a place in France. It's actually a hill that I can see from my parents' house in the Rhône Valley, exactly in between Marseille and Lyon. And so basically, it's in a city called Rochemort, and Chenavari is the highest hill of that village, and that's basically my the place I grew up. Chenavari is a place where I like to run and practice some sports when I was a kid. And when I started the firm, I decided to pick that name. Lots of people are telling me, is it Indian, Italian? No, it's not Indian, Italian. It's a place in France. And but yeah, probably not the best name from a marketing standpoint for brand marketing guy that you are. You probably would say that. But yeah, after 17 years, people have get used to it, and now we're well known as a relatively good fund.
Well, you might be surprised, but I absolutely adore your description of it. Frankly, the issue is so many brands are done just for the branding component, whereas for you, the meaningfulness of it, every time you say it, I'm sure you have a little memory of your hill and and
Yes.
and your family, and so that for me is
Yeah, I
is
mean, this is yeah, and I think the first time at least you ask yourself, okay, what is it? Where does it come from? And at least people remember probably a bit more than if it's
mm,
like kind of the Blue Mountain type of names.
right.
But yeah, we so Chenavari Investment Manager is the name of the fund. Yes.
Mm. Well, congratulations on all that. And I saw you got involved with L'Oréal as well on in a tremendous project on Solstice. So you are a man about town. I want to speak about your mantra, which you wrote on your Instagram account. In French, it's croire, c'est pouvoir. In English, you wrote believe it's possible.
Yes, I mean, yeah, it's just I this is what I'm trying to pass to people around me, is that we all have the right to have dreams, and if we really believe in it, that we can make them happen. And so yeah, I've always been raised by my parents and my environment into you know yes, pushing the limits, and so we're trying. That's what we're trying to do, and I like that motto. So that's kind of governing what I do. Is if we don't believe that the impossible is possible, sometimes it can get a bit boring. It doesn't mean that you will always succeed, but when we fail, we learn, and so yeah, I've always liked to believe that croire c'est pouvoir. At least that it doesn't make it, but it's a big part of it.
Mm, love it. So an optimistic. We're going to talk about success in a little while later, but I want to talk to you about Lorient because your football team, which is in Brittany on the coast, a fishing town, as I understand it, is currently sitting at the top of League Number 2 with 3 games to go. How exciting is this?
It's very exciting. It's very exciting. I mean, it's very exciting because even though it's at the lower league, I mean, we've most of the time been in the top league, and we had a bit of a setback last year, being relegated. We had like the one of the eighth, 7 or 8 budget of the top league, and we ended up to be relegated. So I was a bit of a underperformance, as I like to call it. But again, I mean, so it's tough for the club, it's tough for the fans, but we managed this year to really switch everyone into a new project, the project of going back to the top league as soon as possible. And it's easier said than done. So far the team has done a great job. The coach, the coaching team, and locally also re-engaging all the fans, that makes that club unique. I mean, this is a club that will be 100 years old next year in 2026. It will be 100 years old, so it's a big thing, and we'd like to celebrate it, obviously, in the top league. So I hope it's going to be the case. But as we say, competition are never finished until the last minute. It's the same in paddle, it's the same in tennis. So we've been, I think, 90% of the season we've been top of the league. We're gonna try to stay there for the remaining 3 matches, 2 home games, 1 away game, and let's see. We'll know mid-May where we stand.
Super. Well, just like I've had on my other podcast, Limited Dialogue, several sports players, also many top executives, and you have this unique position where you are both business and running a sports team. And the question I have with figuring on success is what are the crossovers as a businessman and running a sports team in crafting success? And what are the things which are very different in the business world from the sports world?
Mm-hmm. So first, I mean, I ended up, owning and running a football club, despite football not being my main sport. My sports originally is tennis, and I'm a tennis player, and I've played football a bit, but most of my time has been spent on tennis courts, and now a bit more paddle courts. But I grew up seeing my father being president chairman of a handball club. In France, handball is a big thing.
Big deal.
And so in very near to Chenavari, near the town where I grew up, there was a handball club, and my dad, on a pro bono basis, I mean, obviously it was the amateur world, has been chairing that club for many years, and they went up divisions, and you could see that connection, and that the club was becoming important for the town, and I really enjoy going to the no, it's not stadium, but it's like the indoor hall, the indoor arena where the matches took place, and I've always liked that, and I wanted to experience this, obviously, ideally in a sports that had also a commercial angle and a business angle, and I always felt, well, I'd like to do that in a club where I can bring something, maybe business sense and commercial sense, development sense, and but with a strong foundation on the sports side. So for several years, for many years in the early 2000s, I looked at different clubs and potentially getting involved. I never imagined I would get involved in top league or second league, and I looked lower than that. But then eventually, I was approached by someone that wanted to sell, to exit FC Lorient. That was back in 2009. At that time, I was in the early years of the fund here, so I was very focused on my new asset management business, and initially declined the opportunity to even go and look at it. Even though I knew that club because I spent a lot of time during my holidays. My parents were both teachers, and we had long holidays, and we were spending a lot of time in Brittany. So it's a region I really love. My first name, actually, Loïc, is from Brittany, just to show the attachments that my parents had for that region. And long story short, I was convinced by the fact that, yeah, FC Lorient was the club for me. It was a club that had a very strong sports history, foundation, had not played at the top level for a long time. And but there was very little in terms of infrastructure for the club itself. There was like a few people working. There was not a real academy, and so we, I felt that I could bring something, a vision, a project, and leverage the great things that there was on the sports side. And that's, the rest is history. It's my 17th season. Yeah, we've played 12 or 13 in the top division, yeah, 4 in the second division. So that has been quite a journey. And so basically, your question about the similarities between the business world and the differences between business world and sports world, I would say that I've worked in capital market in banks, and I run an alternative asset manager, so basically sort of hedge fund slash private credit fund. So the one similarity that you have is that the people, you rely on top people, on talents to make a difference. So basically, it's not like obviously your processes are important and everything, but it's like the stars are the people. The talent and the stars are the people. So obviously, on the sports side, they have a bit more of a media effect because they are very, the press is talking about them a lot and everything. In the finance side, probably they talk a bit less, but in the specialized area, I mean, those guys are also very, very key. And you talk about transfers of football players, you obviously have star traders moving from one fund to another. So it's, in terms of management of those ego slash talent and everything, it's a bit the same. There are similarities. The one thing that works best is actually tough love. I mean, is that, you need to respect their talent, but from the time you start treating them as stars and not as like just key members of a team that basically needs to be managed the similar way than any other person, then you're in the wrong. You cannot manage them as stars. You basically cannot be in admiration or in awe again, looking at your key players. They need to be like members of the team, and you need to love them, encourage them, but also be expecting a lot from them. And I think from what I think I brought to the club was also that it's a club with who had like very good values and which are very important for me, but also is pushing the bar a little bit higher, right? The playing in the second division or the first division in itself is great, but we want more. We pushing people, and I think we try to create something like this. So there are like similarities, but there are massive difference. Obviously, you can lose a game, on small things. They work all year, and at the end of the day, they go down maybe for 1 goal difference at the end of the year. That makes a massive difference. Is it something that you could have planned, you could have worked better? No, it's. I think the main difference is that those sports business, the main purpose is to be fabricant d'émotion. So basically, we are emotion manufacturer. We bring
Mm,
joy, joy of paddle.
mm,
We bring
mm,
joy to fans. We bring emotions to the fans, to the ecosystem of the
mm,
city, and I think that's really unique. You don't find that in the business world, right? So whether it's
mm,
on the football pitch, on the rugby pitch, on the tennis courts, on the paddle court. I mean, these sports businesses as a whole have have that one particularity, the emotion that you're not gonna find in the business environment.
mm,
So and I think that's why also it drives the interest of some entrepreneurs and businessmen into the sports because
mm,
that's something that is really unique.
mm. And especially different, basically, from the way it is in finance. It's not
Yeah,
exactly an emotion. I mean, it
exactly.
creates emotions, but not the same.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you have a good month or you have a good day and you've made the right decision on your investments and the funds benefit from it, it's also satisfaction. You're very
Mhm.
proud of what the team is doing. Here, there's something more. This being said, being in sports is 80% of frustration and 20% of joy. It's like you always feel like because you are in sports, it needs to go well. The reality is that that Federer was saying this about in his career. I think he won 50.
53% of points.
Exactly, 53% of points, and he was like dominating the game. So it's those tiny difference or tiny little details that at really the high level, it's only minor details that makes a difference, but it's the sum of all those details that makes that the club is or the club or the team or whoever is on the pitch that is working better than the opponent.
I take a more philosophical approach because I don't have your knowledge, but Viktor Frankl, he said life is about suffering. And so in this, suffering, the pains and agonies, the boringness of doing the same shot over and over again, that's how you get good. All right, let's switch to paddle because
Yeah,
I
just on that,
go.
I disagree with this. I don't think life is
Okay,
about
go.
suffering. I think that life is about learning. So when we
Mm,
suffer, when we fail, it's something that we need to yeah. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's painful, but we improve. And I prefer the sentence of Mandela, right? You never lose. You always learn.
mm.
I think
Well,
it's yeah. I don't like the suffering aspect.
Well, I don't blame you. I
No.
suppose what he means by it is more learning through and
Yeah.
getting through the
Exactly.
difficulties. All right, so let's switch to paddle now. Had a
Yes.
great little chat about Lorient. That was beautiful. What about? So you've been playing a lot of tennis. How and when did you get into paddle?
Well, it's very interesting because I think the first time I played paddle was probably I think around 2012, 13, something like this. Um, and believe it or not, the first time I played paddle, I played in the Middle East, and
Whew.
and I played singles. So I didn't know about paddle, obviously, but I played a single, and then we played early in the morning, and then the people came and told us, but you know that you should be four on that pitch, and we were having fun. Two tennis players, we were playing left and right, and so on. And so it's just for the anecdote. But the first time I don't remember the year exactly, but it was like early after 2010 for sure, but probably between 2010 and 2012, 13. That's when I started to play paddle. But but I've been regularly playing tennis and occasionally playing paddle, and I followed the rise of the sports. And it's been a few years that I am absolutely convinced that paddle has something that tennis doesn't have, which is the relatively low barriers to entry for playing. If you are a good tennis player and you play with someone that plays less well tennis, it's difficult to have fun. on the paddle court, I think relatively quickly you can have fun with people from different level. A bit similarly to golf to some extent, if you're patient in golf, a very good player can play with a very bad player. It's just gonna wait a little bit to go and pick up the balls, but they can share and have the same emotion. I think in paddle, it's people quickly have fun, and I think the social aspect of paddle was what struck me first. And then the next thing is I started to obviously follow a bit more when the competitive aspects of the sports when my friend Nasser Al Haifi, the chairman of QSI, who's also the president of PSG, but I know quite well through football. I realized he actually helped close that deal on Premier Paddle, and basically there was like the ambition of really developing a tour that was quite to the standard of other sports. And I realized quickly that I love sports. I know a lot about many sports, but I was absolutely unable to name the top 10 of the paddle players, either men or women. I knew they were mainly Spanish or Argentinians, but of course, you know a couple of names, LeBron, Cuello, and so basically, I felt that something needs to happen also on the competitive sports. So the investment strategy on paddle has been the one of first someone that is passionate about the development of the sport. So I'd like to be involved in that development, and as for me that's both angle. There is the day-to-day social aspects of paddle and the growth of the number of courts, the growth of number of players, and there's also the development of the tour. And I think we'll try to get involved on the both side of the game, and we have so that's how the genesis of how we ended up founding 10 Paddle, and we can talk more about it, of course, if you like.
I do. I would. Just to go back to you as a player, playing tennis and paddle, how do you switch? Do you need to like change your gears when you go from one to the other? Because obviously I observe a lot of players who are tennis players, they don't quite get paddle. How do you manage to organize yourself, your mind,
Well, I mean, I think I'm not sure I've totally. I'm still in the transition, right? I mean, I'm still. I'm not giving up tennis. Obviously, I really love the sports, and I think, relatively speaking, I'm probably better at tennis than I am at paddle. So I'm still in this transition, and I think I fell in the trap of any good tennis players that comes onto the paddle court, feels that they can play well, they hit harder than they should. They are thinking more about hitting the ball, on the volley, especially the volley or the smash. The smash, the racket is shorter. At the beginning, you feel like you're a good player, and then
and all of a sudden the ball comes back. Oh shoot!
Yes, exactly. So the tougher you hit the ball, the faster it comes back. So it's more of a strategy game, and that's why I enjoy is that each time I play paddle, I feel like I learn something, and probably you probably improve when you realize that it's more about angles, times, and so on. And I have to say that attending like top player matches and watching top players play has been a huge learning experience, because as someone that that understands the sports, watching those players, both men and women, play, then there are things you try to replicate. Obviously you don't, but at least you try. And yes, it's been so it's a great game. I haven't solved the game. It's just like I'm still. I think there's so many things to. And I wish I had a bit more time to also take more courses and lessons to keep improving. But I felt that now the speed at which you play, playing softer and looking more for angles, and is obviously the way to go.
what's wonderful about it is that you and I've been playing for 51 years, is that I still feel like I'm learning. And part of that learning now, of course, is how to play at my age, because that, whereas I could play differently when I was 20, you have a different speed reactions, and you can maybe sprint up and go back quickly. But now with the slower body and a different sort of physical abilities, I have to learn how to play within that boundary. So the Hexagon Cup, how did that come about? Was that Pierre coming to you, or was that Enrique Buenaventura? How did that idea of investing in the Hexagon Cup team, 10 paddle, come about?
No, so actually, we were contacted. I was contacted by the founder of Hexagon, Enrique Buenaventura,
Yeah.
and
Who's been on the show?
oh yeah, I mean, he's a key person of the sports, obviously, and yeah, and so basically explaining what he had done in Formula E, his vision for that, and for Hexagon Cup. And to be completely true about it, is one of the owner of 11-11, the team, so Danny Omedes, the team, let's say American flavored team with Eva Longoria of the Hexagon Cup, who I had met while around the Miami Grand Prix, because he owns a paddle club over there. And so I had met actually the three partners of 10 Paddle, i.e. Pierre Gasly, myself, and Diana Killman. We both had been together at that Miami Grand Prix. Diana and I had met with Pierre Gasly, and before the race, after the race. Then we went in the evening, went out after the race, and going out, there was like, oh, you guys are tennis players, and Pierre said, well, we should play paddle. I said, oh, okay, let's do it. And so the next day we were playing at Danny's club, Danny's Omedes club, and we played that game. CEO of Renault Alpine also was there. And so for the story, Pierre is playing quite often paddle, and so we lost that game. But through that game and through that connection, when then Danny told me, well, you should look at the Hexagon Cup, and then he introduced me to Enrique. I mean, all those connections, and I said, you know what? I called Pierre. I said, we should do this together. Are you in? And it took probably I don't know, 10 minutes to agree and do that. And so Pierre, Diana, and I are now the owner of 10 Paddle. So it's one of the 8 teams of Hexagon Cup, and we played our first Hexagon Cup. We have a great team with, among others, Claudia Fernandez on the women's side, Mike Yanguas on the men's side, and and among others, I'm not going to name them all, but yeah, we did well for our first event, and we have the ambition to also be part in the development of this Hexagon Cup. We recently signed a very important agreement with the Tour and the International Federation. So watch the space. Some things are coming on that front.
Excited. I certainly enjoyed it myself. You wrote in a post, impressive atmosphere in Madrid for the Hexagon Cup, which hosted the most impressive paddle event of the tour. 8,000 fans every day cheering for the best paddle players in the world. So the team with Mike Yanguas and Claudia Fernandez as your sort of professional icons, and of course you have the up and comers. How do you get to choose them? I mean, is it like a lottery system in the American approach? Does it change every year, or are you going to keep Yanguas and Claudia Fernandez?
Oh, we basically, I don't know if Enrique explained you. I mean, each team has one franchise woman player, one franchise man player. They sign a contract for a few years, and then you basically have a sort of a draft system for to complete the pair. And depending on how you've done the previous year, you know, and how where you are ranked, you can choose within the list to complete the next player. And so, for example, on the men's side, Javier Garrido was also one of the top player. And so we managed to convince him to come and join the team. And so basically last year, Yanguas and Garrido, who used to play together, we reunited that pair, and that was an incredible pair. And so basically, yeah, there's this combination of franchise player who are in for several years, combined with a draft mechanism, and we got some help from some padel experts, obviously, you know, on the management of the team. We had some of the great coaches as well on the bench that you need to basically also retain for the team. So that's, I mean, it has been a great job that was done. We created a nice team atmosphere. We arranged you know, obviously there was the first time that all those people were playing together, and like tennis, it's a very, you know, let's not say exactly like tennis because it's in doubles, but could say it's almost a bit of an individual sport, right? And so bringing this team spirit, I think, was something that they greatly enjoy. We had we arranged a couple of events, social events before the events, and we play bowling, we play snooker together. We had a team evening, and we also had dinner together. So I mean, that's creating that team bonding, which was great. And then obviously the event was in Madrid. Stadium was full. It's the biggest prize money in the tour, as you said. It's the biggest stadium, I think. Also, if you put aside, I think maybe the French Open, which has a bigger capacity. But this indoor approach is, you know, kind of felt a bit what you can feel when you go to Bercy for the ATP 1000, or like what was happening in London for the ATP finals in Canary Wharf. But yeah, it was very impressive. And I told Enrique and the Hexagon guys, the only thing is that we did it really the Spanish way, i.e., you know, the games were like, sometimes you were playing at 1 a.m, so you feel like the Australian Open or the US Open, you know, like when matches starts after midnight and complete. And I was impressed and amazed to see that the Spanish fans were still in the stadium at that very late time. And one of the reasons I think where we were a bit penalized is because 2 days in a row we finished the games very, very late in the early morning. And I think for the players, it's not also easy to adapt to that schedule. So that's something that we'll definitely work on for the next season.
I can well imagine. But, you know, I've had many great players on my show. I've had Mike Yanguas, of course, the lovely Mike. And I have to imagine
Magic Mike.
Yeah. Well, and Javi is also a magical player when he's on top of his game. The decision to put two together, I mean, systematically, every pro talks about that challenge of having the right couple, just like the challenge of finding the right spouse. It is at that level. So when you are choosing in the draft, the knowledge of how Mike, if he's your franchise player, is going to play with, because he plays on the right, so you need a left-sided player. All right, but who does he fit with? How does the chemistry go? Because you might get the best left player. Let's say, you know, Tapia. Is Tapia and Yanguas the right combination? I mean, you would imagine so, but really there's also the knowledge and the ability to get together, how they bond as a team.
Yeah, that's where we use the knowledge of you know, people who are on the tour, who are the coaches, you know, and we try to have some contribution and then make the best choices. Obviously, we made the choice to recruit franchise players that basically you know, play on the right, as you said. and
Yeah, both Claudia and Mike.
yeah, so which basically was a bit of an unusual choice because the other teams have the franchise players that play on the left. But that gives you more choices than there's less competition in the draft for that. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we didn't win the cup, but we did. It was like our maiden cup, and you know, it's a learning experience, but I think we have a great team. I'm very proud of the guys, the way they've played the team, you know, and consider the event as an important step in the season and career. And I think Hexagon Cup is working on rolling out other events throughout the calendar now that they have this agreement with the tour and the international federation. So I think we will see more of that. And obviously, you know, Rome has not been built in 1 year. You basically strengthen the foundation of what we do. And Pierre Gasly, Diana Killman, myself, we are all quite competitive. So you know, we want to do better, and we don't want to overpromise. So we're just doing our work and making sure we can improve, and next year play in the semifinal of that tournament.
Yeah, because you finished at fifth, so
Yeah,
just off the
which
semifinals.
is actually good, you know, when you think that for your first year there's 8 teams. I mean, your fifth is we lost a couple of matches on the tiebreak of the third set. It's just like we also had some injury issues, so actually we had a very good next gen player, which, you know, counts for 1 point also in each of the games. And unfortunately, we had one injury that forced one of our next gen player to retire, and that handicapped us because obviously then there was a replacement player, but the replacement player didn't have the same ranking, and so she did well, but you know, it's just like it's sports, you know. Sometimes you have like the unforeseen happens, and
And the show
obviously
must go on.
the show must go on. You have to adapt. You have to, and I think we did well.
Well, like in life, you know, we have to deal with the mistakes, the imperfections, the suffering as well, and that's part of life. Last question for you, Loïc. In your position, what do you think is the future of paddle, and when do you think we're? I mean, a man like yourself, I bet you're pretty tied into what's going on. When are we going to go to the Olympics?
Well, I mean, I think the Olympics is going to be amazing, yeah, to get paddle at the Olympics. I think when you see the sports that are at the Olympics, you know, some very, very minor sports are at the Olympics, and given the 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 number of people involved in paddle, the number of players involved in paddle, the growth of the sports, the impact it has from a media standpoint, and so on, I would be extremely surprised that it doesn't go to the Olympics at the next available opportunity. So yeah, if I had to bet, I think it will be a demonstration sports at the next available opportunity. It's not done, but it will happen. I think what's next for paddle is also the US. I think the US and in Europe, obviously, we see growth, lots of growth in France, which was a bit late in the development of the game. Italy, France, Germany. I think those countries are definitely growing up. I heard recently that. So obviously, I was in Middle East last week. This is actually in Dubai. It's actually incredible, the growth of the sports. Obviously, over there they have a lot of indoor facilities with air condition and so on, which are like all very, very top notch. But you know, I heard Indonesia is a big market for paddle development, and obviously that's the US, famous kind of pickleball paddle, you know,
Battle.
battle. I think pickleball is ahead in the US, but I wouldn't be surprised that paddle is going to catch up for two reasons. It's a true global sport. You know, the same way like soccer took time to develop in the US, it eventually did. So I think, in my opinion, there's room for a global sport, and I think paddle is the global sport. So I wouldn't be surprised. It's gonna take time, but I'm also involved in Playtomic as a shareholder, you know, I see how they basically roll out that paddle tech company, you know, that they have, and the scalability and what they bring in terms of efficiency to the club management and club booking. And I think the US is definitely a big market for Playtomic. And you know, I told you before that I'd love to be involved in paddle from both sides, both the, let's say, the social angle, the retail, you know, which is, you know, Playtomic is definitely one way to do that. And on the other hand, at the competitive level, you know, Hexagon, 10 paddle. I mean, those two are definitely you know, more like the competition sports. Even though Hexagon and Playtomic now have a joint venture for the development
Also,
of amateur leagues, and I believe in that. I think it's paddle. One of the great attributes of paddle is its strengths for social aspects, for corporate bonding. Lots of companies are using the sports as yeah, like corporate events, and I think this is the way to go. So I'm not over bullish, but I think there's very few sports that are growing with the numbers that we see in paddle.
well, Loïc, been great having you on this show. Good luck. I think that hopefully by this time this comes out, we might even know whether Lorient has capped the League Two, and certainly looking forward to hearing about the adventures with Paddle X or Paddle 10 with Pierre and
10 paddle, yeah. We're called the X paddle team because you know, all the players were doing you know the power of branding. So you know, 10 paddle, the X in the Roman language is 10. So, and 10 is also the number of Pierre Gasly in the Formula One grid, and 10 is also the key players on the football pitch. You know, they're creative and so on. So for us,
right.
that's what 10 paddle comes from. But I thank you very much, Minter, and it was a pleasure to be at Joy Paddle. And I look forward to meeting you on the Queen's on the paddle the paddle course of Queen's Club, maybe in London.
Indeed, or even tennis. I'm game for both. Loïc,
Okay.
un grand plaisir. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Bye.